In this video, I'll give you a full tutorial on building advanced MCP servers in Python. That means we're going to go beyond the basics. I'm not just going to show you how to set one up. I'm going to talk to you about more advanced features like authentication, databases, and the underlying protocol and how that actually works. Now, obviously, I won't cover everything in this video, but you're going to have a much deeper understanding of how MCP servers actually work, how you can build them, and again, how to add those more advanced features that you're going to need if you ever wanted to push this into something like production. MCP obviously is a hot topic right now. A lot of companies are building this, and this is a really good skill set to have. So I recommend watching through the video and even through all of the theory that I'm about to go into, because it's really important to understand what an MCP is and how this works and the underlying protocol. Okay, so with that said, I want to give you kind of an in-depth breakdown of MCP servers. More importantly, the architecture of MCP servers, clients, and the different components. Then we're going to hop into the code and I'm going to show you how to build everything. There'll be timestamps in the video player down below, so if you want to skip forward to a section, go ahead and do that. But now we're going to hop over to the computer. So I'm on the computer now and I'm going to start breaking down the underlying architecture behind MCP and the different components that make this up. Now, if you're unfamiliar with MCP and you don't even know what that means, I would recommend checking out this video on screen because it goes into it in much more depth and will explain it simpler than what I'm going to do here, because I'm going to assume you have a little bit of an understanding. That said, MCP is Model Context Protocol. In short, this is a standardized way for AI agents to communicate with different AI tools. So for example, to connect to Google, to connect to a local file service, doesn't matter. We have all of these different tools. And before MCP, it was very difficult to connect these to AI agents. Now having these MCP servers kind of brings this standardized approach. So this video is teaching you how to build the MCP server, so that tool that AI agents can connect to, but we're also, of course, going to go over the architecture and you're going to understand a lot more behind how this protocol works. Okay, so I want to go through this quick diagram here and break down the core components you need to understand. I also just want to note here that I did team up with Stitch for this video. They handle a lot of the authentication and authorization. Don't worry, they're free to use. And even if you don't want to use them for this video, then you can still follow along and pretty much all of this is going to be applicable. Okay. So we have this MCP host. Now the host is like the software that you're using. So Claude Desktop, Cursor, Windsurf, anything that can connect to an MCP server, right? Like any kind of software is our host. Okay, now within that host, we can have multiple MCP clients. These clients are running locally on our computer or locally within the tool or software that we're using, and they're responsible to communicate using the MCP protocol with the MCP server, which can either be running locally or can be running remote. Now, this is going to make more sense in a second, but for every single MCP client, they're talking to some MCP server. So in this case, we have one host, right? Something like Claude, and then maybe we want to connect all of these different tools. So we try to connect to these 3 different MCP servers, in this case right here. In order to do that, we have 3 separate MCP clients, and the client and the server communicate using this protocol, which is the Model Context Protocol, right? Which has a standard kind of set of instructions and communication that happens between the client and between the server. So just understand that you have the host, you have the client, you have the server. The protocol is kind of brokering the communication between these 2 services. And then from the MCP server, you can do anything you want. So you can connect to a file system. You can connect to Slack. In this case, you can do something like authentication, which I'm going to show you later on. So hopefully that is making sense. If not, don't worry, we'll clear it up in the rest of the video. But I just quickly want to go over transports. Now, when we set up MCP servers, we can pick the transport that we want to use. Now, the first and most standard transport that you've probably used before is STDIO, or Standard Input Output. Now, this means that the MCP server is going to communicate through the input and output streams on your local computer. So this is used for local integrations and things like command line tools, where you're essentially reading the output of a command and then, inputting something to the command. Again, like it's kind of like a command line tool. That's how this is being ran. Then we have SSE, okay? This is server sent events. Now this transport enables communication through HTTP post streaming requests. And then we have custom transports and recently just the standard HTTP transport, similar to how you would communicate with an API if you've ever built one of those before. Now I'm bringing these up because in this video, we're going to use the HTTP transport. Now it's important to know what transport you're using because that will determine how you connect to the MCP server and what different hosts you can use, because not all hosts support all of the different transports. So in this video, we're going to use Claude Code as our host. You can use something else if you want, but this is going to be the easiest one to set up for us and allow us to communicate with our MCP server using the HTTP transport. And then the last major thing I want to go over in this section is the MCP server itself and what this actually provides to the MCP clients and host. Okay, so when we create an MCP server, everyone is pretty much aware that we do this to give access to some kind of tool. So your AI agent can call this remote tool that it wouldn't normally have access to. That's one component of an MCP server. However, you can also have resources and prompts. So I'm just showing this screen here from the OAuth documentation because it sums this up very clearly. But a resource, for example, is just something like a file or text or content that can be read. Whereas a prompt is just a reusable prompt that your AI agent can use, so you don't have to keep setting it up. Okay, so I just wanted to make you aware, you don't only have to give access to tools, you can also do prompts and resources as well, and I will show you how to do that in this video. So now that we've gone over that, I want to talk about authentication in the context of MCP. Now, most times when people are spinning up MCP servers now, they're relatively simple, they're running on the STDIO transport, and they don't have any type of authentication. That just means you have some kind of agent, it just uses this tool, and the tool doesn't really know what agent is using it. It just knows, something's using it, it doesn't have some identity provided with it. And obviously that's fine in simple examples, but as MCP evolves, we need to have some form of auth. Now, you may have seen there is a simple form of authentication that some MCP servers include, which are API tokens. Now, this obviously is better than no authentication. It allows you to have some kind of string which identifies, the client that's using this string, and then you can have maybe tokens or limits or whatever, right, associated with this API key or this API token. Okay, so that's something else that you can use, but it's a bit of a pain to be issuing these API tokens, managing them, and also for standard users, someone who's not technical, an API key or token is really not something that they probably know how to use or even understand what it is. So the next form of authentication, which is not commonly used now, but will start to be more commonly used, and that's why I'm showing it to you in this video, is using the OAuth protocol. So the standard authentication protocol that you're probably used to using for things like web applications, signing in with Google, signing in with Facebook, etc. So in front of me, you can see a quick example of what the OAuth protocol kind of does, but what we're going to do in this video is we're going to implement that in our MCP server. So in short, what's going to happen is the user is going to add this MCP server to their host, something like Claude Code. It's going to say, hey, we're not authenticated. Then it's going to pull up a browser window. That browser window is going to allow the user to either create a new account or to sign into an existing account. They will then sign in. They can give different permissions to the MCP server. So they can say, I'll give you access to do this, whatever, like consent. Then we will redirect back to the MCP host. We'll have the authentication credentials. We'll know, okay, this user is signed in to this kind of MCP server, and then we can start doing things using that user's identity. So for example, our MCP server can distinguish which client is communicating with it, and we can store different information. We can have different permissions. We can have different scopes. It gives us a lot more flexibility, just like you would have if you set up your own API or your own web application or something along those lines. So hopefully that's making a little bit of sense, but that's the advantage of using the OAuth protocol and having this kind of MCP server authentication. We know who we're dealing with, we can deal with sensitive scopes, permissions, etc. And then if we have this set up, we can also use this for other applications as well. So the data that we use within our MCP server, we could expose it via a website, or we could expose it on the TV, or we can use it in some other application, because we're going to actually separate out our authentication server and our MCP server, which again, I'm going to talk to you about later. Okay, so if we look at this quick diagram, you can see we have some user agent, right? It's a browser. We have some client. So the client sends an MCP request to the MCP server. We get this unauthorized because, hey, we're not signed in. So we generate this kind of sign in link, right? We open the browser with this link. Then we authorize with the MCP server. Okay, user logs in and authorizes. We redirect back with the authentication code. The authentication code is stored in the client. And then the client and the server communicate using that code. So the server knows what client is communicating with it, and then it has permission. Okay, that's kind of like the simplified OAuth flow, and you can see that right here. Now, just quickly, what you see on screen here is an example of a consent screen. This is something that's standard when you're allowing something like an MCP host to access your data, right? So you're going to allow to create new results, read your organization secrets, etc. Okay. Now let's quickly talk about the MCP Authorization Server, and then we are pretty much good to go and we can start coding this out. Now this is another important part of our kind of OAuth flow here, because as you see, we have the MCP client, we have the server, maybe we have some third-party service that we're calling, but we also need something that handles the authentication for us. So we need something that issues signed access tokens, supports the OAuth 2.1 flows, presents the consent screen, enforces the token lifetime, etc. Now, in our case, we're going to use something called Stitch to handle this authorization server for us. And essentially what will happen is we'll tell the MCP client, hey, this is the auth server that we're using for this application, and that will handle all of the complex auth flows for us. Now, just to explain this quickly, again, the auth server needs to do all of those things, right? Because it's handling the authentication for us. And there's two different architectures that you can implement to build the auth server. Now, the first is to embed the authorization server directly inside of the MCP server. So MCP and auth are just the same thing, right? They're on the same server, and they just have all of these different roles that they play. Now, that's okay, but you're coupling these two things together and not allowing your app to be flexible in the future, where if you wanted to use this auth for a different type of application that didn't rely on the MCP server, that's a little bit more difficult. So the second architecture is this. This is where you delegate to an external authorization server, which is a separate resource, a separate component that is not coupled to the MCP server. So I'm just going to scroll down to that architecture so you can see what it looks like. We have two separate servers. This auth server is going to be handled by Stitch for us. Again, it's free to set up, don't worry, so that we don't need to directly integrate it in the MCP server and do all of the complex auth stuff, which again is very complicated. Now, there's a bunch of stuff on this page. I'm going to leave the docs in the description so you can read through it if you want more information. But here is a quick diagram recapping what we covered. Essentially, we have some MCP client, okay? We use the model context protocol to communicate with an MCP server. The MCP server essentially tells the MCP client, hey, we're using this auth server, which is provided by Stitch. Then the MCP client uses the auth server, gets the token, so it signs in, gives consent, gets the token. That token can then be sent to our MCP server, and the MCP server can check with the auth server and say, hey, was this valid? Is this user actually signed in? Did they give consent, etc.? And if they are, then we can give them permission to do whatever they want. Again, it'll make more sense when we get into the example and you see what I mean here, but I just wanted to go over all of the theory because that's the whole point of this video. I don't want to just code a bunch of stuff blindly and you guys have no idea what is going on. So that's pretty much it. Just the last thing here is again to discuss the role that Stitch is going to play in this video because we're going to use it. Now, this is going to allow us to authenticate our users, handle the auth server, do all of that kind of stuff. But there's two things that you can do with Stitch. So you can just use Stitch for standard authentication where you rely on a third-party service like sign in with Google or sign in with Facebook or GitHub or something along those lines. Now, those things right there, like Google, GitHub, Facebook, etc., they're what's referred to as identity providers because they provide the identity for a particular user, right? And if we sign in with Google, then Google will pull up a consent screen essentially saying, hey, Stitch wants to access your name. It wants to access your birthday, whatever, right? And it has kind of all of these different permissions. So that's fine. We can just use that with Stitch if we want, or we can actually set up our own identity provider. What that means is rather than relying on Google or Facebook or some other service, we provide the identity, for our application, and then we can use that identity anywhere else that we want. So if we had data that was related to the application that we're building for our MCP server, we could then have another application that the user can sign into with our identity provider and access that same data. So essentially, if we are our own identity provider, which Stitch allows us to do, then we just have more control and flexibility, especially for permissions, scopes, etc. Don't worry too much if that's not making a ton of sense, but I just wanted to make it clear that there's kind of two options there. And in this video, we're going to provide our own identity. Okay, so with that said, it is time to finally start writing some code. let's get into the editor. All right, so I'm inside of PyCharm here, which is the IDE that I'm going to use for this video. Now you can use whatever you want, but if you do want to use PyCharm, which I typically recommend for Python heavy projects, that I do actually have a long-term partnership with them where I can give you a 3-month free extended trial of their Pro subscription. So you can check that out from the link in the description. You'll see a lot of the great features that PyCharm has, but again, it's free to use. I'd recommend try it out, see if you like it. If not, you can obviously switch to something else. Okay, so what I'm going to do to get started is I've just opened a new folder here called MCP Tutorial. Now I'm going to create a new Python project and virtual environment, and to do that I'm going to use something called UV. Now you can set this up however you want, but I'm going to go with UV init dot. This is going to create a new UV project for me and initialize a new virtual environment. Now inside of here, you'll see a few files are created. So we have main.py, Python version, etc. And now we're going to install the dependencies we need for this video. So I'm going to install UV add, and then I'm going to say that we need to install fast MCP. Okay, this is what we're going to use for creating the MCP server. This is a module in Python that just makes it a lot easier to create MCP servers. We're going to install .env. This is for loading environment variables. We're going to install stitch. This is for actually doing the authentication and authorization. And then we're going to install the SQL alchemy like this. Okay, so let's install all of that and we should be good to go. Okay, so all of that is installed, and what we're going to do now is go over to main.py, and we're going to start templating our fast MCP server. All right, so to begin, we're going to get rid of all of the stuff that we have here that we don't need, and we're going to say from fast MCP import fast MCP like that. Okay, we're then going to say from .env import load.env, and we're going to start importing a few other dependencies that we need for doing some more advanced logic later in the video. So we're going to say from starlet. Okay, now starlet is something that allows us to handle API requests. We're going to say .middleware.cores import the cores middleware. We're then just going to copy this, and we're going to say from starlet.middleware import, and then rather than the cores middleware, we're just going to import the middleware. Okay, so those are the 4 imports that we need right now. And then we're going to call the function load.env. Now what this is going to do is load environment variables for us, which we're going to define in just 1 second, which we'll need to configure our Python script and the authorization server. Okay, next we're going to create a new MCP app. So we're going to say MCP is equal to fast MCP. Okay, now for here, we can give this a name. So we can say name is equal to, and this is something that the MCP client or host is going to be able to see. So you want to define this something that makes sense. So in my case, I'm going to call this the notes app. Then what we're going to do is we're going to define our first MCP tool, and you're going to see how easy it is to make a tool here using this fast MCP library. Okay, so we're going to say at mcp.tool. We're going to put a set of parentheses, and then we're simply just going to define a function that defines the tool that we want to make. Now I'm going to make a simple note application where users can create new notes and then retrieve the notes just to demonstrate how all of this works in the video, but obviously you could make something more complicated that had more useful tools. So what we're going to do is we're going to say define, and the name of our tool is going to be get my notes. Okay, then what this is going to do is return a string. So I'm just going to specify the Python type hint here. And then I'm going to put a doc string, okay? Now the doc string that you write here is going to be the description of the tool. So make sure you write something that's useful so that the MCP server knows when to call this tool. So again, the function name here and the doc string are important. So I'm going to say get all notes for a user, okay? Then inside of here, for now, we're just going to return no notes, okay? Later, we will actually retrieve the notes, but for now, we haven't set that up yet. Okay, and then we're just going to create one more MCP tool. So we're going to say at MCP tool. We're going to say define, and this is going to be add underscore note. Okay, now when we want to pass a parameter for our tool, we simply define the parameter. So we can say content, and then we should give this a type. So in this case, it's string, which is the content of the note we want to add. And then we can just have this right here. Okay, so we return a string. We have our doc string, add a note, not to a user, but for a user. And then we'll return added note, and then whatever the content is. Okay, so very straightforward. We've now defined 2 MCP tools. Now I'm going to show you how to run and connect to the MCP server. Then we'll go over a few other concepts, and we'll start obviously building this out. Okay, so we have the 2 MCP tools. Now what we want to do is we want to run the MCP server. Now to run this, we're going to say if underscore name is equal to underscore main underscore, then we're going to say mcp.run. Okay, now inside of run, there's a bunch of configuration options that we can pass. Now the first thing that we want to pass is the transport. So we're going to say the transport is equal to HTTP, specifying that we want to run this over HTTP. Obviously, you could change this to be like STDIO or SSE if you were using a different transport. Then we're going to specify the host. So we're going to say host is equal to 127.0.0.1, which is just localhost, meaning we're running this on our own computer. If you wanted to run this on some kind of domain, then you could change the host, obviously. Then we're going to specify the port. We're going to say port is 8000, so that's where we're running the server. And then we're going to specify a middleware. Okay, so we're going to say middleware is equal to, and the middleware is going to allow us to connect to the server when we're not on the same localhost domain. So we're going to say middleware like this, okay? Now for middleware, we're going to pass the cores middleware. And for the cores middleware, we're going to pass some options, okay? So we're going to say allow origins asterisk, allow credentials true, allow methods asterisk, and allow headers asterisk. What this means is that we're essentially allowing anyone to connect to this MCP server and to use it. If we don't have this, then people that are on a different domain, so they're not running on our local computer or the domain where this server is hosted, are not going to be able to connect, or there could potentially be some issues. If you want to limit who can connect to this, then you can change these options right here. Okay, so that's literally all we need for setting up a simple MCP server. I will quickly show you that inside of the tool here, you can pass a few other options. So for example, if you wanted to change the name, you can do that. If you want to change the title, you can do that. If you want to change the description, if you want to add tags, annotations, etc., you can do that directly inside of this tool, what's known as Decorator. Okay, and it shows you a few examples of how it works, where you can pass like a custom name. Now, if you don't do that, which we're not, it's just going to take the doc string and the name of the function as the title or name of the tool and as the description of the tool. Okay. All right, so we have all of that. Now all we need to do is just run this Python code to run our MCP server. So we're going to say uv run and then main.py. Okay, that's going to run the MCP server for us. And now I'm going to show you how we can connect to this using Claude Code. All right, so there are two steps to connect to this basic MCP server. The first is that we need to download something called ngrok, okay? Now, ngrok is a tunnel forwarding service that allows us to essentially create a public IP or public domain that connects to our localhost server. The reason why we need this is because when we use Claude Code to connect to our MCP server, it doesn't support running the MCP server over HTTP on localhost. So we need to set up what's called a tunnel, which you're going to see in 1 second, which is very simple using this tool. So you need to go to this website, which I'm going to leave in the description, and you need to download and set up ngrok. Okay, there's multiple steps. You can download it, and then you need to add your authentication token. So to do that, you're going to have to sign into ngrok on this website or make a new account and essentially run this command in your terminal. Okay, so make sure ngrok is installed before you go to the next step. Okay, after that, you're going to need to install Claude Code if you're going to use this locally as obviously as your MCP host. Now, if you're on Mac or Linux, you can simply just run this npm command if you have Node.js installed, which it says right here, and I'll leave this link in the description, and then Claude Code should just work in your terminal. If you're on Windows, then you need to use WSL in order to install this because it's not supported natively in Windows. So WSL, again, it requires a little bit of setup, but I assume most of you probably already have that installed. If you don't, I'm going to leave a link in the description that walks through how to set this up on Windows, okay? So anyways, we need to open WSL, which I'm going to do on Windows. Okay, I'm going to zoom in, and the way that I open this, let's just, /quit or something, or quit or exit, okay, is you can open a command prompt and you can type WSL, okay? That's essentially all you have to do to start WSL if it's activated on your computer. Again, if you're on Mac or Linux, you don't need to do anything. You can just use your default terminal. Now from here, once you've installed Claude Code, you can simply type Claude, and that's going to open Claude up for you, okay? We'll make this a little bit larger, and then you can start interacting with Claude, and obviously you need to sign in order for this to work. And you can ignore this auto update, doesn't matter for right now. Okay, so I'm going to quit out of that because the way that we add the MCP server to Claude here is a few steps. Okay, so we've got this open. We're going to go back to PyCharm. We have our terminal running with our MCP server. And now what we're going to do is we're going to set up the tunnel so that we get a public address for this MCP server, because right now it's just accessible on our local computer. So to do that is very simple. You're going to type the command ngrok http 8,000. Okay, HTTP is the transport, right? And then 8,000 is the port that our server is running on. Okay, when we do that, you're going to see that it opens up this right here. It says forwarding URL is the following. So we're going to take this forwarding URL, and anytime we send a request here, it's going to proxy it or forward it to localhost port 8,000. Okay, so this server now is accessible from this public URL. This is very common in development. All right, so now from our Claude desktop, we're going to type the following command to add the MCP server to Claude. We're going to type Claude and then MCP add -- transport, okay, HTTP. We're going to give the MCP server a name. In this case, I'm going to call it notes, and then we're going to paste this URL, okay? So the forwarded URL, Claude MCP add transport HTTP, the name of the server, which is notes, and then we simply pass the URL. Okay, we're going to go ahead and press enter, and it's going to add this MCP server to the local configuration for Claude. Now, if we want to test this, we can open up Claude. So we're going to open up Claude like here, and it says it failed to connect. Okay, actually, I know what the issue is here. My apologies. We're going to exit out of this, and we're going to fix my mistake. We're going to add this /MCP. Okay, so you need to go to this /MCP route. I forgot that that is what you need to add. But essentially, you add this /MCP. Make sure you don't forget the MCP. Hit enter, and now, if you go back into Claude, it should work if you type Claude correctly. Okay, so you can see here that it is all working. We didn't get any errors. If we want to check the MCP server configuration, we can type /MCP. When we do that, it should show us our MCP server. In this case, it's called notes. If you type 1, it will show you the tools. So you see we have get notes and add note. And then if we want to use one of these tools, we can just ask Claude to do that. So say add a new note for me with my MCP server. Okay, this is going to take a second, and then it should actually ask us if we want to make this tool call. So it says, hey, I want to use this MCP server. I want to add this note. We're going to say yes, proceed, and then it should add the note, and you can see that it was successful, and it said added note, and the new note created via MCP server. Then if we go back to our server, you can see that we have all this communication that's been happening through the ngrok tunnel. Okay, so that's all working. We've connected to the MCP server, and that's good. Now what we want to do is start setting up, obviously saving the notes and having them accessible via users, and we want to set up the authentication, okay? So in order to set up the authentication, we're going to need to create a new account on Stitch and get a few variables that we store locally in our environment variable file. So that reminds me, we're going to make a new file inside of our directory here. This is going to be called .env, okay? Now inside of .env, we're going to place a few variables that we're going to get from Stitch, which are going to allow us, to set up the authentication. Now we're going to say Stitch _project _ID. We're going to say Stitch, okay, why can I always not spell this correctly? Stitch _secret, okay? And then we're going to say STYTCH Stitch _domain. Okay, is equal to this. We're going to fill those in just 1 minute. All right, so now what we're going to do is we're going to go and make a Stitch account so we can get those variables. So to do that, we're going to go to the Stitch website, which I'll leave a link to in the description. You're going to make a new account here. Again, it's completely free. You do not need to pay for anything. You're going to go to the dashboard, and you're going to make a new project. Okay, now I've already made a project, but I'm just going to make a new one so that I'm following it to you guys. I'm going to call this the Notes MCP. We're going to select the consumer authentication, not the B2B SaaS, and we're going to create a new project. So what we're going to do here is make sure we're on the project overview, and we're just going to scroll down, and we should get a bunch of this information. So what we want is the project ID, the domain, I believe, and the secret. Okay, so we're going to copy this project ID. We're going to go back to PyCharm, go to env, paste the project ID. Okay, we're going to go back to Stitch. We're going to get the secret, so copy the secret. Obviously, don't leak this to anyone, and then paste this for the secret. We're going to go back, and we are going to get the domain. So this is the domain right here, project domain, and we're going to paste that. And that's almost everything that we need to do. The rest of the steps we can handle later. Okay, so now we have the Stitch values that we need inside of our kind of MCP server configuration, and we can start setting up the authentication for our app. Okay, so we're going to start importing a few things that we need. So we're going to say from starlet.requests, we're going to import request as the starlet request. Okay. We're going to say from starlet.responses, and we're going to import the JSON response. We're then going to say from the fast mcp.server.auth, we're going to import the bearer auth provider. And then we're going to say from fast mcp.server.dependencies, we're going to import get access token and the access token type. Okay, I think that's pretty much everything. There might be something else that we need later, but for now, that is it. Okay, now we're loading our environment variable. We're creating the MCP application, but before we create the MCP application, we're going to start setting up auth. Now, fortunately, Fast MCP makes it extremely simple to implement this OAuth protocol inside of our application. Now, it does that because we can just create this essentially auth object, which will check the access tokens against a particular domain. You'll see what I mean here in just one second, but for now, we're going to say auth is equal to bearer auth provider. For the bearer auth provider, we're going to pass a JWKS underscore URI. I'm going to discuss what this is in 1 second. And this is going to be equal to an F string. Okay. And inside of the F string, we're going to say os dot, okay, dot get env. And we're going to grab the stitch domain. Okay. And this needs to be inside of single quotes. Sorry. So let's fix that. Stitch, not secret, domain. Okay. And then this is going to be slash dot well dash known. Okay. And then slash JWKS. And sorry, let's fix this because I'm really messing this up. Slash well known slash JWKS dot JSON. Okay. Now OS is also something that we need to import. So let's import that. And I'll quickly discuss what we're doing. So we have an F string. We're loading in the stitch domain from our environment variable file that we just created before. And then we're going to this path, which essentially defines a place where we can check to see if the access token that we have is valid or not. Again, you'll see what I mean here in 1 second. So we have that defined. Then we're going to say the issuer is equal to os.get env. And then this is going to be the stitch domain again. Okay, stitch underscore domain like that. Then we're going to say the algorithm is equal to, and this is going to be rs256. And then we're going to say the audience is equal to os.getEnv. And this is going to be the stitch project ID. Okay. So this is the auth configuration that we need. This is actually almost everything, which is kind of crazy to me that it's this easy to do it, but you will see what I mean. Now, what this effectively is going to do is it's going to check access tokens, which are going to be sent from the MCP client to the MCP server and make sure that they are valid. Now, the way that we add this to our application is we go here and we say auth is equal to auth. Okay. Now, what we're doing is we're saying, all right, for our fast MCP app, we want to use this authentication configuration. Now, anytime someone tries to use one of these tools, what's going to happen is it's first going to check this auth right here. It's going to make sure that we have a valid access token, and then it's going to allow us to actually grab who that access token belongs to, which you'll see in 1 second. Now, one small change that we do need to make when we add this auth is we need to add a parameter to our, functions here called CTX. Okay, so for get my notes, we add CTX. And for add note, we add CTX, and we can just preface this with an underscore because this is something that we're not going to end up using, but we need to put it here in order for the auth to work properly. It's a little bit weird, but it's just how fast MCP works because it needs to be able to pass the information into this tool. Okay. So we now have 2 tools and we have authentication actually set up. Now, we're not really handling the auth properly yet, but you're going to see now if I go back to, first of all, if I restart my server, so let's shut down the server and restart it, and I go back to Claude code here. So let's go /exit and let's open Claude again. This time when it tries to connect to the MCP server, we should get an issue and it says MCP server failed to connect. And if we go to /MCP, it says enter to view details, and you see that it's saying, hey, there's this kind of incompatibility issue, but the point is that we're getting this authentication problem. So what happens is our MCP client is trying to connect to the server. When it tries to connect, it gets this 401 unauthorized because it's not passing a valid access token. So what it then does is it goes and it hits these two URLs, which are defined in the MCP protocol, that define where the authorization server lives and where it should go to sign in effectively. So it's saying, okay, I'm not authorized, so I need to sign in. Where do I go? So our next step here is going to be that we need to write one of these two routes. We're actually going to write the protected resource route, which is going to tell our client, hey, go here to be able to sign in. Okay, so that's what we're going to do next. And then you're going to see that we're going to start kind of getting this flow running, and it will start making more sense as we go through the video. Okay, so we're going to add an @mcp.custom_root. Okay, now this is something you can do if you want to add your own custom configuration to the MCP server, which of course is what we need, and we can define any /root that we want, and essentially override what it's returning. So we're going to say /.well-known/OAuth-protected, okay, underscore, and this is resource, not route. And then we're going to say the methods are equal to get and options, okay? And make sure you spell resource correctly, of course. What are we spelling wrong? Resource like that. Okay, so this is the route. Make sure it's exactly like this. So the same one that it attempted to call here, the well-known OAuth protected resource. Now inside of here, we're gonna define the OAuth underscore metadata. Okay, then we're gonna say request is starlet request, and we're going to return the JSON response. Okay. All right, so inside of here, what we're gonna do is we're gonna say base underscore URL is equal to string of the request dot base URL dot r strip, okay, this stands for write strip /. The reason we're doing this is we wanna know what the URL of the essentially client that hit this was, because we need to know that URL in order to return the information back to it that we're going to do in 1 second. Okay, now from here, we're going to say return, and we're going to return a JSON response. And the JSON response that we're going to have is going to be a Python dictionary. And inside of here, we're going to have the following keys. We're going to have resource, which is equal to base URL. Okay, we're going to have authorization, okay, underscore server, and this is going to be equal to, servers, and this is going to be equal to a list, which is os.getEnv, and then stitch domain. Now let me pause here and explain what this is doing. So if you remember near the beginning of the video, I said that the authorization server that we have is going to live separately than the MCP server. So what we're doing here is we're effectively telling the MCP client, hey, this is where the authorization server is. Now, in this case, you can specify multiple authorization servers if you want like a backup or something, for example. In our case, we just have one. So we're putting that here. So we're telling it, go here to deal with all of the auth related stuff, okay? Then we're going to put scopes underscore supported, okay? And we're going to put read and write. Now, I'm not going to get into this too much, but essentially we can define whatever scopes we want here. And when we do this, it will change the consent screen that we see later on and tell the user, hey, like the user wants to this application wants to access the ability to read and to write, or to do this and to do that. Now, these scopes you can learn more about from the Stitch documentation as well as from the MCP protocol itself. Again, I don't want to get into it too much, but right now we'll just leave read and write. Okay, and then we're going to pass a bearer underscore methods underscore supported, and we're going to pass a list, and we're going to pass header and body. Now, what that means is that we will look for the authorization token in one of these two locations, so either in the header of the request or the body of the request. Now, I understand this may be a little bit confusing, but this is a standard payload that is defined in the MCP protocol for OAuth specifically, okay? So when you're signing in with OAuth, you're using this protocol, you're expected to have this route right here, and this route is expected to return this. There's actually some other options as well, but this is all that we need in order for this to work. We point to the authorization server, and then our MCP client is able to redirect us there, where we can then sign in, get the token, and then that token can be sent back, where it is then authorized using this bearer auth provider that we defined right here. Okay, so now what's going to happen is if we stop our server and restart it, so let's go here and shut it down with Control-C and restart it. If we go back to Claude, let's get out of this. So go 1 and /exit. Okay, and we start this again. It's going to initialize the MCP connection. Again, it says failed to connect. If we go to /MCP, we can enter to view details, and then notice it's saying, hey, I'm trying to, open up this authentication server, but it doesn't support dynamic client registration. Sorry. We're going to fix that in 1 second, but the authorization server was read properly, and you can see when it went to this URL, now it was defined, it got the authorization server, but it just wasn't able to load it properly because we haven't configured the option inside of Stitch. So what we're going to do now is we're going to go back to Stitch. We're going to go to where it says connected applications, and where it says allow dynamic client registration, we're going to enable this. So we're going to go edit. Okay. We are going to just tick this box and we're going to enter a URL. Okay. I'm going to specify what this is and explain it in 1 second. Okay. So this is the URL, http://localhost port 5173. Now, because we're working in development, we can use this URL, but in production, you would make this a URL that's actually hosted. Now, let me explain what this is doing. So what needs to happen is our MCP client, or in this case, Claude, right, is going to attempt to open a URL that provides a way for us to log in. Okay, so we need a front end essentially, which we're going to build in this video really simply in just 1 second using React, that's going to define this component. So essentially what it says, the authorization URL is the location in your web app where the identity provider component is hosted. This value is visible in your project's OpenID endpoint. For applications to integrate, to complete setup, you must have an authorization URL set. Okay, so we're going to set this for right now, and in a minute, we're going to build this essentially front end. Now, the front end is just very, very simple, and it's just going to have a page where the user can sign in and they can give consent to the application. Now, of course, we need this because if you're going to be your own identity provider, which we are in this case, we need a way for the user to, well, sign in, sign out, give consent, etc. So we have all these components that we can use. They're very easy to set up from Stitch, but we still need to serve the front end. Again, this is the page that we're going to go to in our browser to sign in. So I'm going to press save and save changes. Okay. Now that we have this, we're going to go back. Okay. And we're going to exit out of this again. So let's exit and we're going to go Claude. And now what should happen if we go to /MCP and we press into this is it's going to attempt to open the browser. It says incompatible auth server. Okay. So we might just need to restart the configuration or it's just not updated yet. So let's give that a second. Okay, and I just realized I made a spelling mistake in my environment variable. I had Stitch spelled incorrectly. So of course it was trying to load this authorization URL, but it wasn't loading properly. And so we got an error. So I just fixed this environment variable. I'm going to close this. I'm just going to double check that we are loading the environment variable correctly. So Stitch domain, okay. And Stitch domain. Okay, good. We're going to restart the server so we reload the environment variable because again, I just spelled it incorrectly. So we didn't have the correct URL. Let's get out of this. Let's go /MCP again. And now notice it says a browser will open for authentication. Okay, takes a second and it generates this URL for us. Now notice this is going to 5173, right? The URL that we defined in Stitch. And it has all of this stuff that you don't really need to understand that has to deal with the OAuth flow. So what we could do is we could copy that and we could put that in our browser, right? Now in our case, when we do this, nothing happens because port 5173 is not defined, right? Like we don't have anything on port 5173, but had we set up this front end already, we would then see the screen to sign in, we would sign in, and then once we sign in, we would come back here and we would be authenticated. All right, so what we're gonna do is we're just gonna get out of this for right now. So just close that and we're going to start setting up a very basic front end where we can essentially serve this page, this login page, so that this flow is complete. Once we complete the front end, we're pretty much done in terms of the flow. There's just a few small config things and kind of getting the user ID and stuff that we can do, but that will be mostly it. So if I go back to Stitch here, and actually that's the wrong project, sorry, let's go to this one here. We go front end SDK. You'll see that we have to enable the SDK in test. Okay, so let's go ahead and press on enable. And then we've got a bunch of options here. So we're going to add a domain to use the JavaScript SDK. So first we're going to edit this, and change this to port 5173 and press on confirm. Okay. And then if we scroll down, there's all these different options related to the SDK. For now, we're going to save this with the domain change to 5173. And you'll see up here that we have the ability to use JavaScript, React Native, iOS, Android SDKs, etc. from Stitch. Now you can also write this manually, but of course they have these SDKs that just make it a lot easier to use. So what I'm going to do is press on JavaScript. Again, just make sure you've changed this URL here. And when I do that, it should bring me to the docs. Now we have a few options here. We can integrate Stitch directly with the vanilla JavaScript SDK. We can use the Next.js SDK, or we can use the React SDK. Now React SDK is the one that I'm going to use for this video, but you can use anything that you want. And if you scroll through these docs, you get a bunch of options. And of course, you can change all the stuff and make it more, custom. So let's go to the Stitch React documentation. And here we go. It brings us to this page, and it gives us some basic steps that we need to follow in order to set this up, okay? So we need to wrap our app component in the Stitch provider, and then essentially we just need to write the Stitch login component as well as one other component on screen, which we will do now. Okay, so what we're gonna do, first of all, I'm just gonna copy that command so we have that to install the Stitch package, and we're gonna go and make a front-end directory. So I'm gonna move all this stuff into a backend directory, so let's do that right now. Go new directory, let's go maybe backend here. Okay, let's clear that so we stop the server. Let's just take everything and put that inside of backend. Same thing with our virtual environment. Okay, and then we are going to create a new React project. So to do that, we're gonna go in our terminal when we're in the directory of our project, and we're gonna type npm create vite at latest. Okay, then we're gonna go -- and then I think we can just call this front end and press enter. Okay, now it says we need to install this. So let's go ahead and press on yes. We're gonna go with React as our framework. We're gonna go with JavaScript as the variant, and then it should create that for us inside of this directory. Okay, so we're gonna cd into front end. We're gonna type npm install to install all of the packages. And then I'm also just going to install the Stitch package that I need. So I'm now going to go npm I and then at Stitch/React like that. We're going to install that Stitch package, and then we should be good to go from the installation side here in React. Now, as well as installing that, we're going to type npm I and we're going to say at Stitch and then /vanilla and then -js. Okay, so let's make sure that's installed as well, and then we should be good to go. Okay, so now we're gonna go into our front end directory. We're gonna go to source. We're gonna remove the assets. So I actually already did that. If you see assets, it's gone now. We don't need the image that was there. We're gonna go to app.jsx. I'm just gonna clear pretty much everything inside of here other than the app component because I don't need that. I'm gonna remove the imports on the few files that I deleted, okay? So your app should just look like this, very empty. Then we're gonna go to main.jsx, and I'm going to start wrapping the app component in the Stitch component. Now, if you're wondering, like, how the heck do you know how to do this? Well, I just read the documentation, right? So it says here, this is the install command that we do, okay? And then it says that we need to bring in the Stitch provider, okay? We need to create this Stitch client, which we do, okay? So I can just literally copy this. So let's grab those two things. Let's go here to PyCharm, and let's paste them. Okay, perfect. Now let's just move this down just so it's a little bit cleaner. It says we need to get some public token, find this in the Stitch dashboard, so we'll grab that in a second. But for now, I'm just gonna wrap the app component. So same thing, if we go back to the docs, we can see that it says, okay, we need to wrap it in Stitch provider. So let's grab Stitch provider. Let's go here. Let's wrap Stitch provider and Stitch provider like that. Okay, and then we can fix the formatting here, and we are good to go. All right, so now we need to get this public token that it's talking about. So let's go to our Stitch dashboard and find that. So from Stitch here, we're gonna go to the project overview. We're gonna scroll down, and we should have a public token. Okay, perfect, public token. So we're gonna copy that, come back here to PyCharm, and then just paste that bad boy in here. Okay, so now we have the Stitch app wrapped. Now that we've done that, we're able to go into app.jsx here, and we can start writing a very simple component that will allow us to render the consent screen as well as the login page. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna say import and we're going to import the stitch login, the identity provider, and the use stitch user from @stitch/react. Okay. What we're going to do here is we're going to say const, and this is going to be inside of braces. User is equal to use stitch user. This is going to get us the current user in case they're signed in. Pretty much what's going to happen here is we're just going to ask the user to sign in. Now, if they're already signed in, then we just need to show them what's called a consent screen so that they can give our application consent, and then they're good to go. All right, so we're going to say const user, use stitch user. Then we have a return. So from the return, we're going to do a simple div. Okay. Inside of the div, we're going to say the following. We're going to say if not user. So if we don't have any user, then we're going to ask the user to sign in by showing the stitch login component. Now there's a few things we're going to pass that component in 1 second. Otherwise, we are going to show the identity provider component. Okay, we don't need to pass this user thing. We can literally just show the identity provider component. All right, that is pretty much it. And then we just need to pass the configuration here for our stitch login. So what we're going to do is we're going to say const config is equal to the following. And then we just need to specify a few options to configure the login. For the login, we need to do things like say, okay, we're going to allow you to log in with Google, or we're going to allow you to use passwords, or etc. Right? And in fact, a really easy way to get this configuration is if you go to frontend SDK, go to JavaScript here. So actually from here, if you go to component playground, this is a really easy way to actually mess with what you want to enable or not. So for example, we can enable passwords, we can disable Google, we can disable magic links, we can change the theme to be like dark theme, for example, and then we can specify like all the font and all of this stuff that we want. And then we can just go to config and we can just copy this, right? So we'll literally just copy the configuration that it gave us. We'll go back here and we'll just paste that as the config. Okay, so that's all that we need. And now that we have that, we can just pass that object. So we'll say config like that. Now there's other options that we can pass to the login component, but for now we really don't need to. Like this is totally fine. So that's it. That's pretty much our entire front end. In fact, that is the front end. There's nothing else that we need to do. And now we just need to run the front end, and then we should actually see this screen popping up when we want to sign in. So what I'm going to do is open my terminal and type npm run dev. Okay, so you can see the front end is running, right? We have localhost port 5173. And now let's go and do this flow. So actually, okay, let's make sure ngrok is running. We also are going to run our MCP server. So we're going to cd into backend. I'm going to type uv run and then main.py. Okay, it's going to run the MCP server for us. We're going to go back here. Okay, we're going to type Claude. All right, should open it up. We're going to go /MCP, and notice it says disconnected. So here we're going to press on 1, and when we do that, it's going to try to connect by opening a browser window. So it gives us this URL. So let's copy the URL. Let's go here, okay, and let's paste it. And then we should see, okay, looks like we're getting an error. Let's inspect the console. It says uncaught syntax error. The requested module does not provide an export named identity provider. Okay, so let me check what's wrong with that, and I'll be right back. Okay, so of course I just spelled it incorrectly, so let's fix my stupid spelling, and let's go back here and refresh, and then you can see that it shows up this page, right? So it's a sign up or log in. So what I will do is I will just continue with my email by making a new account. Okay, and I just made a new account here, and then it's not showing us the consent screen, which is something that I need to check quickly here, but it did allow me to actually make that account. So let me just debug here, see what's wrong, and then we'll be right back. Okay, so same mistake. I just spelled the identity provider component incorrectly. So if I come back here now, you'll see it's showing up, and it says that it wants to view our identity and view our personal information. So we can allow, and then it says that we logged in successfully. Then it redirects us to this page right here. Don't worry too much about that. You can change the redirect later if you want. And then if you go here, you see that it says authentication successful, connected to notes. Okay, and if we go to /MCP, we can press into this and we can re-authenticate, we can clear our authentication, and we can view the tools. So if we go to view tools, we can now see the tools because we are authenticated with the server. So now I can say, add a new note for me or something, and it should be able to do that by making the tool call. Now at this point, we're not yet associating the notes with the user, which is what I want to show you how to do now, but the authentication is finished. So in this case, we could do the tool call. No, I'm just going to say, no, we don't want to do that. Okay, so let's continue now. Let's finish the MCP server, and I promise you the hard stuff is done. Okay, so now we're going back into our MCP server code because we're going to start writing it so that we associate notes with users, and I'll show you that like when we sign in with different users, we get different notes, etc. Okay, so what we're going to do here is we're going to start using this get access token function that we defined. So inside of our tools, what we can do is we can say that the access token, which is of type access token, is equal to get access token. Now the get access token is going to get that from the request from us, which is then going to allow us to grab the user ID. So we could say the user ID is equal to the access token, okay, like this, dot client underscore ID. And this allows us to associate now notes with users inside of here. So this is how we get the access token. I'm just going to copy this and put it inside of my add note as well. There's a bunch of other stuff you can get from this access token. Like if you look at this type, you can scroll through it and you can see all of the different values that are inside of there. But in our case, we just care about the client ID. Now I want to be able to store this persistently using a database. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to set up another file inside of here, and I'm just going to call this database.py. Now I'm just going to write a super simple class that is going to allow us to connect to a local database on our own computer and save the data persistently so that each user has their own notes. Okay, bear with me. So I'm going to say from SQL Alchemy import create engine column integer string and text. Okay, these are the fields that I'm going to have for my database. I'm then going to say from SQLAlchemy.ext.declarative import the declarative base, and then it already knows my next import. From SQLAlchemy.orm import the session maker. I should also mention all of the code here will be available from the link in the description in case you want to copy anything that I have. I'm then going to say from typing import list. Okay. Now, what we're doing is we're using SQL Alchemy, which is an ORM standing for Object Relational Mapping, which allows us to really easily map a Python type. In this case, it's just going to be a simple note representation to SQL code. So rather than us having to write SQL code, we can just write Python code and it will automatically be translated to SQL. Now, in order to do that, we need to start by defining a database engine. So we're going to say engine is equal to create engine, and then we specify, I'm going to get rid of the echo here, what database we want to connect to. Now we can say SQLite : the name of our database, in this case, database.db. This will create it locally. If you wanted to connect to a Postgres database or a remote database or something like that, you would change the engine definition here. Then we're going to say the session local is equal to the session maker, and we're going to say auto commit is equal to false. Okay, auto flush is equal to false, and we're going to bind this to our database engine. Next, we're going to say the base is equal to the declarative base, like so. Okay, and we are going to now define essentially the Python object that we want to map to SQL. So like what we want to store in the database. So I'm going to say class, okay, note, and this is going to inherit from the base. And then what we can do is define the table name, which is going to be notes. And I need to put my colon here. Okay, then we're going to say the ID is equal to column, integer, primary key equals true, and index equals true. Now we're just specifying the fields that we want to store in our database. So we want to have an ID for each of our notes so we can, well, identify them. Then we're going to say the user ID is equal to column, string. We're going to say nullable is equal to false, which means this value has to exist. And we're going to say index equals true. This means we're going to be able to look up notes by a user ID. Then we're going to say content is equal to column, text, okay? And then nullable equals false. If you can't tell, this means we're storing an integer, storing a string, and storing text, which is like a large amount of a string. Okay, so that's our note. That's what's going to be stored in the database. And then we're going to say base.metadata.createAll and then bind this to the engine. Now what that's going to do is it's going to look at this note here, essentially anything that inherits from base, and it's going to create that inside of our SQL database as a SQL table. Now the next thing that we need is a simple function here. So we're going to say define get underscore database. This is going to give us a reference to the database. We're going to say db is equal to session local. We're going to try to yield, we got to spell yield correctly though, the database. Otherwise, we're going to accept db.close. All right, and sorry, not just except, this is going to be finally, so that we end up closing the database connection when we're done with it. Okay, then lastly, we're going to make two functions here inside of a class, which are going to allow us to create a note and to get our notes. So we're going to say class note repository, okay, and we're going to say at static method, and then we're going to define get underscore notes underscore by underscore user. We're going to take in a user ID, which is a string, and we're going to return a list of type note. Inside of here, we're going to say the DB is equal to not the session maker, but the session local, okay? And we're going to try to get our notes. So we're going to say try return database.query. We're going to query the note table. We're going to filter by the note.user underscore ID, okay, is equal to the user underscore ID dot all. So what this is doing is it is essentially saying, hey, we're going to look in the database. We're going to look in this note table that we defined, right? We're going to check the user ID of the note, and we're going to see if that's equal to the user ID we're looking for. If it is, we're going to grab all of those results and return them. And then we're just going to say, finally, db.close, just in case there's an error here when we try to do this operation. Now I'm just going to copy this and paste it down here. And I'm going to change this to create note. Okay, here we're going to take in the user ID again. We're also going to take in some content. So we're going to say content string like that. And this is just going to return a new note. All right, now here it's going to be a little bit different. Rather than returning this, we're going to do the following. We're going to say note is equal to a new note. We're going to pass the user ID and the content. We're going to say db.add note. We're going to say db.commit. This means we're actually going to save it. And then we're going to say db.refresh note and return it. Okay, and let me explain what this is doing. All right, so we're going to say note is like, db.refresh and then return note. All right, so we're adding the note essentially to like a staging area. We're committing it. We're refreshing it. When we refresh it, what that means is we're going to get any new values that were created after it was committed. So in this case, it's going to be the new ID that was generated automatically for us. And then we're going to return this note to the user. All right, that's it. So that's all we have inside of database. Okay, so again, reference this code. We're going to go back to main.py, and we're now going to use the database from our tool so that our tool is actually functional. So what we're going to do is we're going to say from database imports the note repository, and then we can just simply use the note repository inside of our tool. So for example, inside of add note, we can go down here and we can say, note is equal to the note repository, okay, dot, and then this is going to be create note, and we're going to pass the user underscore ID and the content. And then what we can do is we can say return added note, and then we can just pass the note dot content. Easy enough, right? Okay, so that's adding a note. Now getting the notes is a little bit different, but what we can do is we can say notes is equal to the note repository dot get notes, and this is going to be, I believe, for user or get notes. What do we call this? Note repository. Let's check it. This is get notes by user, so let's change that to be by user. Okay, we pass our user ID, and then all we need to do is just essentially convert these notes into strings so that we can return them. So we're going to say if not notes, so if we don't have any, then just return no notes found. Okay, otherwise we're going to say result is equal to your notes, okay, with a \n. We're then going to say for note in notes, and we're going to say result plus equals, and then this is going to be f, and we're going to say this is the notes dot ID colon, and then this is going to be the note dot content. Okay, then what we are going to do is we're just going to say return, and this is going to be the result. Okay, and then also, sorry, we're just going to add a \n here to make sure this goes on a new line. All right, so that should be actually everything for the MCP server. We have the ability now to add a note, to get all the notes. So let's test this out and make sure it works per user. So let's go to our MCP server, let's shut it down, and let's restart it, and let's test. Okay, and silly mistake, I accidentally did underscore table when I meant to do underscore table name. Okay, so let's make sure that's correct. And now if I run this, it should fix the problem that I just had there. Okay, so we just fixed table name. Now we're running, MCP server is going, and we can test this. So we're gonna go to /exit for right now. Gonna open Claude. Okay, we're gonna go /MCP, can see that it is connecting. Okay, and now let's try to add a note. So let's go add a new note saying I am happy or something. Okay, so let's see what it does. And if this works, if it does the tool call for us, which it should. Okay, so we have the tool call, so let's go, yes, I am happy. Okay, and then note added, cool. And then we can say, get all my notes, and we can go yes. And I also realized we have a small bug, and you can see it says your notes, 1, I am happy. Okay, small bug here, guys. Actually, it looks like that I was mistaken and we don't need this CTX parameter. I thought we needed it, but it looks like we don't. So I'm just gonna remove that from here for now because it's unnecessary, but you can see that this is working. Now, what I really wanna show you is that we have a note for this user, right? But if I go to /MCP, I go here and I go re-authenticate and I sign in with someone else, we will have different notes for a different user, which is kind of the whole point of this. So let's take this, let's go to our browser and let's paste it. Okay, and actually in order for this to work, I am gonna have to sign out. So I don't have a sign out URL set up, but I will do something quickly to be able to do that. So give me one sec. All right, so we do need to sign out, but because I didn't write the sign in page, I don't plan to do that right now. I'm just gonna open a incognito window where I'm not signed in and I don't have the cookies stored, and I'm gonna sign in with a different user. Okay, so let me do that now and then I'll be right back. Okay, so I'm signing in with a different user. I'm gonna go allow here. I'm gonna go back to our Claude code. I'm gonna say add, or actually view my notes, and hopefully it will make a tool call now and be able to view my notes. So let's go yes, okay. And we're getting the same notes. Okay, so let's quickly debug this. And okay, so actually I see what the problem is here, and it's that we're using the client ID, which is actually gonna be the same for every single request. Now, what I need to do is I need to get the sub, which is associated with the JWT token that's being passed here. Now, again, I don't want to get into too complex of details, but essentially the way that the bearer authentication works in Fast MCP is that it's giving us the client ID, which should represent the user, but in this case, it's not. It's representing the client, which is like Claude code, right, who's sending this request. So what I'm going to have to do is a little bit of manual work here, but it's not too bad. I'm going to shut down the server, which I already did. And what we're going to do is we're going to type uv add, and then this is going to be python-jose. Okay, now what that's going to do is install a package that we need in order for kind of unloading these JWT tokens. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to say from Jose import JWT. Now this is going to allow us to manually inspect the tokens that's being passed from something like Claude code to our client or to our server here, so that we can actually check the user associated with each token. So actually this isn't too bad. What we're going to do is we're just going to replace this user ID line with the following. So we're going to say user ID is equal to, and this is going to be jwt.getUnverified, and this is going to be claims, and then we're going to pass to this the access token.token, and we're going to try to get the sub from that. Okay, so we're going to copy that and we're going to paste this here. Now, the reason why we need to do this is because the client ID that this bearer auth provider is giving us is not what we need. We need the user ID, which it doesn't give us by default. So we're going to look at this JWT token. It's going to include this thing called sub, which represents the user, and then we should be good to go. Okay, so now that we've done that, we're going to run our MCP server. So we're going to say uv run main.py, and we're going to test this again. Okay, so we're going to go /exit. We're going to go to Claude. Okay, and we are going to try to get our notes. So we're going to say get my notes. Now this time we shouldn't get any notes because the client ID is now swapped with the user ID, and let's see if that is the case or not. So I'm going to go yes, okay, and it says no notes found. Perfect. I'm going to say add a new note for me saying hello. Okay, so let's let it do this. Okay, and there we go. We're going to go with yes, and it's added the new note, hello. Okay, now I'm getting some weird API error here because I think I'm using this too much. For now, let me exit out of this. And then anyways, what we're going to do is sign in with a new account and then see if we can get this to work. Okay, so I'm going to MCP. I'm going to re-authenticate. And this time I'm going to sign in with a different account. So it's going to open this. Let's open this in the non-incognito browser this time. So it will use our other account. Okay, and let's fill this in. Okay, so I have filled that in. I'm just waiting now for the redirect. So let's give this a second to hopefully work properly. Okay, and we're connected to the other account. So I'm going to say view my notes. And hopefully this time it's not going to show us any notes because we're signed in with a different user. Now, of course, I'm getting a rate limit error, so hopefully that will go away in a second and then we can try again. Okay, and you can see it now says no notes found. So this is working. Thank God we got it figured out. So our users are now, being handled correctly. And that is actually going to end the video. So that is it. That's everything that I wanted to show you. I know that was a lot of content and pretty complex. And again, all of this code will be available from the link in the description. If you enjoyed the video, make sure to leave a like, subscribe to the channel, and I will see you in the next one.